At this time, I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to welcome everyone here this evening. We do have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? If there are no changes, we'll operate under that agenda. First item would be the consideration of the minutes from the regular council meeting that was held on January 23rd. That was the last council meeting. The council does have the minutes before them. Are there any corrections to note?
Move approval.
A second.
By Craig, seconded by Amanda to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. I did abstain since I was not at that meeting. So we'll move then to agenda item number 2. This is the first of 3 public hearings that we're going to have this evening. So the first public hearing will be a public hearing on the consideration of the adoption of the Article 18-8, the Residential Rental Code. So the procedure that we follow with public hearings is that I'll call on our city attorney to conduct a public hearing. She will be connected with us by distance, and then she'll also rely on other staff as she's conducting the public hearing. She'll make a brief presentation. I would note there's also the members of the Rental Ordinance Committee, including the 2 co-chairs, are present, and they may be able to add some things if necessary. Then we'll open it up for any public comment. So when you're making public comment, because we're being broadcast over cable access television, anyone wishing to make a comment, I need to have you come up and use the microphone. And then we'll take as long as that takes for public comments, then we'll close the hearing. Or the option would be if there's unanswered questions, we can continue the hearing. So that's what the procedure will be for all 3 of the public hearings this evening. If the public hearing is concluded, then we'll consider the resolutions that would adopt whatever the topic was of that public hearing. So our first public hearing, as I mentioned, is on the consideration of the adoption of the Residential Rental Code Ordinance. So I will call on Pam Whitmore, who is Marshall City Attorney. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Please let me know if you can't hear me very well. I apologize for not being there in person. I am under the weather and did not want to get anybody sick this evening, so I apologize for that, especially with as many public hearings that are on the agenda for this evening. The first one, as you referenced, Mayor, is the rental ordinance. As a reminder, this was introduced on January 9th, but it's not new to this council. In January of 2023, the council initially proposed a rental ordinance, which it decided at that time to do a little bit more work on, and directed staff to do that and start a process where we really had engaged the community through a rental committee. And so I'm glad to hear that some of the rental committee members are there present this evening, and I appreciate them taking the time to be at the meeting. So the rental committee, just as background for the council, met 5 times during the course of this past year consistently, and was made up of not only staff, but also fire, emergency services, council, tenant advocates, landlords, and was facilitated by 2 third-party facilitators. And they engaged in a lot of thoughtful and thorough discussion regarding what the goals of the city were with respect to a rental ordinance. And each time after each of those meetings, there was changes that arose out of those and came back to that committee. And each time the committee rediscussed all those changes and approved what you have in front of you today. And that was approved by a unanimous vote of that that committee. So what do you have in front of the council today? It is a registration ordinance as opposed to any type of licensing ordinance. So it does provide for registration for rental units. There are provisions in there that are specific to short-term rentals, just so that the council knows that there is a section that calls those out. I will recommend that the council, if it is, there is a motion to adopt this, that there be a change that the reference for biannual, BIANNUAL, is confusing. It can mean either every 2 years or twice a year. There is the term biennial, which is BIENNIAL, which I think would be the better term to use throughout. So I would just ask that just technical amendment be made so that there's clarity with respect to that biannual. And why does that matter? It's because the registration is every 2 years, and it is a self-registration with a checklist that gets submitted by the landlord, property owner at that 2-year time frame. There is inspections that are only on a complaint basis. So if there is a complaint about a property, that's when an inspection occurs. That is the 360 overview of the program. I'm sure there will be questions that I'm available to answer. Just to call out with respect to fees that are included, you'll notice that in the ordinance itself, section 18-144 provides that fees would be set by the council through a fee schedule. So the fees are not specific in the ordinance itself. Those are laid out in the fee schedule resolution, which is on the agenda as well. Those went through the Ways and Means Committee, just for the council to be able to know that. With that, I'll conclude my remarks and entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Staff have anything they want to add? Our 2 members of the council that were on the rental committee, do you have anything to add at this time?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay. The co-chairs, anything you have to add at this time? If not, we'll open it up then to any public comment as part of this public hearing. Any member of the audience have any either input or questions? If not, John?
Can't let you get by that easy. Yeah. John DeCramer was co-chair along with that guy sitting in the back, hiding back there. Just a couple of things that Pam did talk about in her discussion. I just as well highlight it, maybe break the ice here a little bit if somebody wants to make a comment on it. This actually, she talked about starting in January last year. It actually started quite a while before that with discussion. It goes back as far as Councilman Bear-Kohler, Councilman Sturrock, myself, Jim, you were involved in some of those and several other ones. We've talked about variations of a rental ordinance, seeing we have over 6,000 members or citizens of Marshall that rent. So it's a very sizable population, almost 50% of our population that rent here in town. And so there is a need for some form of formality and ordinance on this. This involves cooperation between the landlord and the tenant. It works when both parties do their part. It isn't a one-sided thing. The ordinance calls out responsibilities to the tenant or whoever occupies that location, as well as things that the landlord needs to do. And there's 2 main purposes, really, in my mind, to the ordinance. One is that the city has a list of who is offering rentals, as well as a contact person, which is very important in case of emergencies, anything like that. And second is to really ensure basic security needs or safety needs that are met by any tenant, whether it's a short-term or a long-term rental. As mentioned, the ordinance is complaint-based, so notifications go to city and reviewed there. The first part of the enacting the ordinance is to get registration to the city. And talked about, I guess I haven't looked at it to see what the fee is, but there's a small fee associated with that registration. And that there is also for landlords or whatever, if there's a complaint that does come forward, there's a whole process that's called out in the ordinance of how that's handled. There's time for the landlord to make comments, for tenants to make comments, time to react to those, to if there is something that needs to be done, so there's not an undue effort, extreme efforts in order to get things done. Is a response that's needed, and the response may be that somebody will be there on next week or whatever as part of that. And then in the end, there is an appeal process for landlords if things don't quite go the way it is. So with that, let it go and see if there's anybody else that has any questions or comments. So.
Thank you, John. Thanks for your leadership as co-chair of that committee. Anyone else wish to speak as part of this public hearing? Does the other co-chair want to say anything? Not that you have to, but.
Mark Claith, the other co-chair. The only thing I would comment is that we really want the tenant to work with the landlord before this comes to the city. It's another tool in the toolbox, as we talked about, to help ensure that the renter is being taken care of, but it's also ensuring that the landlord is understanding and having cooperation with that tenant. So we really tried to make it open for everybody, and probably on the lower level. Being the retired fire chief, I think both Quentin and I would put a little more meat into it, but I think we're on the right path. The registration's a key point. There's a lot of rentals in town that we don't have contacts for. If there's an emergency situation, we don't know who they get a hold of. And they don't know it. So I think it's important. And the fee structure, I think, is based pretty lucrative we looked at other cities, and I think we're fair with that. And I would like to thank the committee. I think we did a lot of research, and there was a lot of conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments as part of the public hearing?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I add just one thing? I wanted to make sure that with respect to the fees as well, there is, the council knows that the committee thought it was really important to give a kind of a grace time, a grace period for people to have the opportunity to register. And so there is a grace period in there before any type of charging of any fees for everybody to get up and running and registered.
Thank you, Pam. Any other comments as part of the public hearing? Council have any input?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing. Oh,
Go ahead, yes.
I have some questions in reference,
Can I'm going to interrupt you.
do I have to?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Shut up. Sorry.
And then,
Guess I have to state my name, huh?
yes, thank you.
My name is Martha Faulkner, and my question is, I've been hearing a lot of communications between tenants and landlords, and I understand the frustration from the landlords because I have been one. But at that time, I had very good communication with the city of Marshall and with the police department. But now it's tenant, we're having a lot of issues with our landlord. We have, excuse me, we have called to no avail. Nothing is done. We get no positive response. We get laughter. We have 5 people that live in the same company, not in the same campus, but in the same company. And we all have the same frustrations. When I was assisting in the office, we were getting some issues corrected. We were establishing communication, but I left simply for the fact that I did not like management. I'm not one for politics. That's why I'm not in politics anymore. They were deafened to the needs. We do not have a manager. I was working in the office, interim, but they refused to hire a manager. We don't have maintenance. We do have one, but he's ill. And this gentleman did an okay job. But we need maintenance that is not a racist. We need a maintenance that is willing to do the job. We need management that has hearing and is able to hear and not hearing problems, but is able to listen. Because you can listen and you can hear. We need somebody to listen to our complaints. In the campus I live in the building I live, is considered family building. We have approximately 27 children. We have 2 washers, 1 dryer. It's been like that for 3 weeks now. In another building, they were without a washer for over a year. Right now, one of the buildings has no dryer because we don't have maintenance to come and fix these items. Minor details, minor repairs. They will not reimburse for the monies that the machines take, which is illegal. There are a lot of illegal issues that were going on with the past management that I did not approve of. I brought it to the main office. The response was, well, management is no longer here. I don't know. And the issue is, me personally, they come to me with their problems, and my hands are tied. And to tell you the truth, these people, and including myself that are here right now, we're in fear of retaliation by the main office. Because this is the kind of people we have to deal with. So, we can talk all we want. And we can make ordinances. And we can make committees of tenants and landlords. But that's not a solution. The solution is to come and fix what needs to be done, especially for those children that are supposed to be our future. We are responsible for these children. The buildings are full of cockroaches. And once a month is not enough. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. You've been articulate in your concerns, so thank you. What I would say is we don't have an ordinance in place now, so we don't have a mechanism to address some of the concerns from the public sector that you're concerning. So that's one of the reasons why we're considering this, so that we do have that mechanism. Perhaps either our city administrator or city attorney wants to make some additional comments, but I do thank you for articulating those concerns. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak as part of the public hearing? Any other comments? Kurt, you have to come up.
One of the questions that I have is
For the record, Kurt Van Meveren.
okay.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I have is a number of minorities that don't speak any English. Their kids speak better English than they do. So I was wondering what's been provided to be able to reach out to them, because they're the ones that I think are likely to rent more low-cost housing, which is going to be where probably there's going to be a number of problems.
Yep.
Is there anything been provided for that?
Good question, Kurt. Sharon, you want to address multi-language communication?
I definitely think that's something we do need to consider and hopefully work towards. We've had other requests for translation in some of our publications and requirements, so we're not there yet, but I think that's good comments.
Okay.
Something else that was mentioned is this notice of 48 hours. If I'm just going to state it the way I hope it is, and you can correct me. In other words, the first person that the tenant's supposed to contact is the landlord. And he's supposed to have 48 hours to be able to respond, which can mean as little as a phone call, to tell them what he can find out. And one of my concerns is I've used plumbers and people to fix heaters and stuff. I've went as long as 4 or 5 days before I could get them there, depending on, like, for instance, an example would be when in weather it's really cold, furnaces break, and it's really hard to get them. So therefore, something to their satisfaction might not be able to be done because of the fact that I don't fix furnaces. And so is there something in there that allows for something like that when the repair is beyond what a person has control of?
Jason, you want to comment on that?
Sure. I think that.
Mr. May,
Yeah,
Go ahead, Pam.
Go ahead, Pam.
yeah, so I'll lay the groundwork and Jason probably will have some input from an operational perspective, but really the 48 hours is to address the issue, which includes having some movement. So notifying the city that there's a plumber coming and that plumber will be there. So I think that's a really good question to raise. But the committee talked about that at length and had those concerns, and the intent is that there is some kind of notification that something's happening.
If I understood you right, it sounds like the landlord has to contact the city to let the tenant know and let the city know that something's happening. Is that what you're saying? Because you talked about letting the city know that something's going.
Go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to jump in and say the city does not want to be involved unless we get brought into the situation. So if we are involved, then we do need to be in the conversation loop. But if a landlord and tenant are able to work it out, then clearly we don't need to be made aware. But if we receive a concern and we reach out to the landlord about that concern, there is that 48-hour period to resolve it. We do want to be a part of that loop then, yes.
Yeah. So in other words, if I was to contact you because the 48 hours was up or whatever, and I told you I'd contact the Trio Plumbing and I don't have control of when they get there, would that be sufficient?
I think that it's a case-by-case situation that we want to work with the landlord to come up with reasonable solutions as quickly as possible. And unless there's an emergency, yes, we want to work with the landlord to get some time to make necessary repairs.
Well, what could the landlord do if he's already contacted Trio Plumbing and he has no virtual way. He's contacted others, and if you use Trio, I use Trio all the time, and I'm just concerned that what's going to happen from that step forward. In other words, where does it go?
Sure, yeah. It depends on the solution that's needed, but generally speaking, yes, it is okay to schedule repairs and work that into a timeline. Yes, generally speaking, but we can't answer all scenarios right now, but
No, I'm not asking all, just the one with just Trio Plumbing, and the fact of it is
yes.
that I don't have control of what they do, and so therefore I try to get a hold of them, and after that, I never found much success trying to crowd them.
Yeah, we want to work with you to find reasonable solutions. So if it takes a little time, that's generally okay.
Well, and Pam, you can answer this, but he used the example of heat and really cold out. There's already a state statute of what you have to do when someone loses a heat site such as that when it's cold out, correct? Because that becomes a life safety issue where all of a sudden you're 5 days without heat and it's 20 below. I mean, I think the state's already addressed that.
Well, I understood the question to be related to plumbing, as I was thinking water. But yes, the state code is in addition to this ordinance above and beyond, and there's landlord tenant protections under the state statutes, particularly related to heat. And I just want to be clear that I assume that we're talking about the 48 hours in that 18-147 subdivision C, which really says that when the city receives the complaint, so that's after, that's when the city receives the complaint, then the city reaches out to the owner representative to let them know, make sure that they know that there's a complaint out there, and allow them 48 hours to address that. And then you have the language to council members' point that unless there's an immediate safety or health concern, which would be like that state-triggered issues. And then after that 48 hours, it's not like the registration's pulled. The language says then that if it's not addressed, which could mean that, hey, it's been scheduled, okay. If it's not addressed, then after that 48 hours, what that does is it gives the ability for the city to go in and take a look at what's going on.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, because I guess what I'm thinking about, what I would have done in the past, is you buy some type of what you think are safe space heaters, but you're not going to get it up to the proper temperature. Now, I talked to Jason before, and I got told that we are not going to take and enforce state rule codes. So can you clarify that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end of that message. We're not going to what?
In other words, the state is going to have to deal with their codes, and you guys will deal with the codes that you've put in. And you're not going to take and enforce the rules that the state has. All I'm asking is clarification.
Well, with respect to code violations, our city inspectors and our code in a separate section just with habitability of places has adopted the housing and building codes. But this overlies on top of that with respect to complaints from tenants for that registration process. And the tenants can have another avenue to complain to the state about some of those additional issues. So I think that answers your question. I'm not positive, though.
No, I'm still not clear as to whether the state's going to deal with the codes they've wrote. And if they double up, that's, I understand you would deal with them. But when they don't double up, are you going to be the ones to deal with it, the state codes, or is the state going to be dealing with them?
Generally, Kurt, generally the ordinance covers the city's housing code, generally speaking. There are certain state things that we're not dealing with that are not in the housing code. Mold in and of itself is not covered by this ordinance, but there is some overlap. There is some stuff that would be under state building code that would be covered. But generally speaking, if you look up the city's housing code, those are the items that are being addressed.
So you're saying you generally will cover what the state rules are?
in some cases. is
I'll
that
say
what you're
yes
saying?
in some cases.
Yes.
How are the landlords going to know what cases you are and you aren't?
The housing code is available on the website, and we can give out print copies as well.
But the thing of it is, you said you're only going to enforce some of them.
It's in the housing code.
Yeah. What happens when the lease is in conflicting with what the codes are for the city? In other words, like for instance, the state has said that when it comes to eviction, you now have to wait 14 days. And I'm guessing that most leases in this town will say 5 days, or the day after they don't pay rent, is what I believe it says.
This ordinance won't cover anything that gets into leases. That's something you'll need to work out with your own attorney.
On an individual basis, you'll deal with that, is what you're saying?
No, we're just dealing with the housing code. Pam, do you want to weigh in?
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a rental registration to identify the rental units. We don't have, this ordinance does not dig into what the leases say, and it doesn't enforce leases or get into the middle of state law versus what a lease states. That's a private matter.
Kurt, do you have more?
I guess when it comes to retaliation, and we heard about that tonight, and I have no doubt that in certain cases that probably happens. But I guess what I would ask is to be very careful, because of the fact that until you've been a landlord, there's a lot of good renters. And there's some that you maybe wish you hadn't met. And so all I'm saying is that on the leases that say when they don't have a lease, you got 30 days. All you got to do is give them 30 days and have no reason to get rid of them. You just say, I want you gone. And anything like that done close to a phone call or whatever, I guess I'd worry a little bit about that. You know, that it would look like it was retaliation when in fact, if there's conflict between the landlord, what I tend to do is I tend to write them a letter and say, you know what, we're not getting along. So you know what, the best thing to do is for us to part company. And so we don't, you know, so that we're done with this, because it seems like we're not going to be able to solve the problems that come up. But I don't know how you guys would sort out retaliation when something like that happens. But anyway, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, do you want me to address the retaliation piece?
Go ahead.
So there is a specific provision, 18-154 in the ordinance that is a very limited provision that is adopted from state law. So it would be required anyway because of state law, and it just protects the ability to the tenants have to make emergency calls. So that's the only piece about a retaliation that's included in this registration ordinance.
You're referring to them making an emergency call and then having something happen right after that, is what you're saying?
Right, correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Pam.
Yep,
Thank
thank
Kurt.
you.
Yep.
Thanks, Kurt. Any other input from the audience as part of the public hearing? Or input from the council?
I'll start off. I was on the rental committee, and I think this is a good registration. I don't think the city marshal is overstepping at bounds, which I'm very supportive. I know we went back and forth with Quinn and Mark about where that line should be drawn, and I think it was a good compromise, actually. And it will work well for us to start out. The fee schedule was not set by the rental committee. I just want to make, I'm not saying it's wrong, but that did go to Ways and Means, so If you talk to the fellow people that were on the committee, that was not done by us. I think it's done very fairly. I think we went biannually or every other year, which was something that was important to me as a council member, that we don't have to do this every year to lessen the burden of this. I think it's a good program that'll serve the city of Marshall well, or a good ordinance.
Thank you, Jim. Any other input? Craig?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just along those lines too, it was really important, I think, to us to not turn this into an inspection and certification of your property. And I think it's really important to say, and Jason touched on this, and I just want to hit it again, based off of, Councilmember Luzinski touched on it also, is that when you register your property, there's a checklist, and you go down through that checklist, and as the landlord or the property manager, you verify that, yes, those things are in place. And if there's a complaint, the visit that the city staff is going to make is basically going to prove whether or not that inspection was accurate and or timely. It might be 18 months after you did your last walkthrough, although I think it's an annual requirement. So the onus on the honesty and accuracy of that really is on the people that are checking the property. And then I think as a landlord, you want to look in your property to make sure that it is in the same condition as you gave it to your tenant. So that's part of that relationship and responsibility between the tenant and the landlord or the property manager. So hopefully, and Kurt brought up some good points, and hopefully this gives credibility to both sides and the value that it is an agreement that has to work both ways. And to the lady that came up earlier and talked about the situation that she's in, that's kind of what that's all about. The things that you talked about, those are things that as those properties get registered, they need to check it off. And to somewhat, it's a self-reporting by the people taking care of the property, but then the proof is in the pudding as to whether that stays accurate or not. And that gives us the ability to hopefully, as a city, help compel that those conditions don't exist or continue. As a tenant in those properties, I think everyone wished it was stronger. As a landlord that complies, I think they wished it wasn't so strong. But I think everybody that was there, and if you look at the people that were on the committee, I think the interests in the community on both sides as property management and as tenants was well represented. And this may not be the end step, but it's certainly a good step. And hopefully it compels it to that we don't have problems and things exist where the city has to become even more engaged. There's good tools out there, but we really looked at this at a city point as being establishing a toolbox with a good set of tools that can work in all the directions. City out, tenants out, landlords in. And hopefully that this plays a good piece of that. Kurt, I apologize. If you want to speak, you can. You certainly can. You have to come back up in front for our audience that isn't here. But those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Kurt, you have one more thing?
So I suppose I should announce that I'm Kurt Van Never again, right?
No, we remember you.
I think you've touched on something really important because of the fact that if this doesn't work both ways, so that the landlords feel like they're getting a decent shake and not getting run down the road, let's think about, we have a particular large piece of property that's in that situation, and has a lot of trouble because it's so big and the guy lives a long ways away. Well, it's also true that down in the Southwest, really rich people are buying up huge sections of retirement homes. So in other words, you'd have to hire, within places, what they're saying is, you'd have to hire a lawyer, spend $5,000 to find out who it is you're supposed to take to court. So what I'm trying to say in a short sentence is basically, if it doesn't work both ways, the small landlord will go away. And then when you get to the big landlord, then even you guys will just get to deal with a lawyer, which will make it even harder and more complicated. So I guess what I'm just asking is the fact that to keep that in mind, that we have to keep away from staying as small as you can, because that way you can deal with landlords. You don't have to deal with, like she complained, there's nobody to complain to. And I guess I just think that's real important because I think it was good that you mentioned it.
Good point.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Kurt. Anyone else wish to speak as part of this public hearing? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jody Arcand. I live in Hunter Villa, and Marta talked about our rentals and stuff like that before, but there's so many things that they just don't care about. You call down there and they're like angry with you and don't want to hear what you got to say. And I lived in there 2 years, and I was complaining all that time about us not having an outgoing mailbox. You know, the other buildings have it where we didn't. And then in August, I had back surgery, and I told them, you know, if my rent is late, that's not my problem because I can't walk across the other building or drive yet, you know. And they finally put one in after 2 years of complaining. And there's so many things like that what do we do? If we complain to them and they do nothing for us, where do we go then? You know, there's so many things and the windows are crap because every day you can dust and you can dust again. You know, it's just crazy to me. So I'd like to know who we go to if we don't go to them because they don't care. That's what I'm asking.
Right. That's one of the provisions of this ordinance. So-
Okay.
So thank you for your
All
input.
right, thank you.
Any other comments? Is there a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Steve,
Second.
seconded by Craig to close the public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll now consider the motion that would adopt the ordinance. Note for the record the spelling of the word biennial. What is the wishes of the council?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. And finally, the next item would be the resolution that would establish the fees related to the residential rental code. Any comments from the Ways and Means Committee?
The Ways and Means Committee went on this, and like City Attorney Whitmore had said, we've got a grace period and we're not going to immediately enforce it. We compared a lot of data to come up with this. And a lot of people are saying, well, it's just another tax. We already have city doing it. But again, anytime you put in something that needs enforcement or the city get involved, there's staff time, there's staff resources. And so this is what it is. And just the database to keep the registry costs money. All these little things you would think aren't that expensive, but they add up. And we brought that up. And so after discussion and research, we thought that the fees that we have established are good, they're fair, and that's what we decided. We'd recommend going with these fees.
Any questions?
Steve, I have a question for you, and I know I've read through this a couple times. The first year registration is waived, or is it $100? I just want to clarify that for the public.
It's waived.
The first, okay. I just
Can
want to make sure that's
I jump in on that?
Yeah, jump in.
Go ahead.
If you register within 6 months of the passage of the ordinance, the first 2-year period is waived. So we're going to send letters out to everyone that we believe may have a rental property and try to make sure everybody's made aware, but we really want to encourage everyone to register as soon as they're able. So.
And that's the way I read it. I just want to make sure you publicly got that out there very clearly.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, can that motion also have the technical amendment of the spelling for the resolution as well?
It does, correct?
Yeah.
And that was with your second. Okay,
Correct.
any other discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion does pass. Thank you. Move then to agenda item number 3. This is a public hearing for the ordinance amending the city charter. Pam?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. This evening you have in front of you the charter amendments that were proposed to the council from the Charter Commission itself. It was introduced on January 9th. And this is a number of different changes, so I'll just briefly go over them and we'll be open for any comments or questions about the specifics if there are any. I think the biggest one throughout you will see is that there has been some updates to go from pronouns to titles when possible. And then when a title would not make sense, then it was a non-gendered pronoun. And so that is, you'll see that many cities are moving in that direction to do that. Then there was many statutory changes that have happened over the course of the last few years since an amendment to our charter that dictated some of these other changes. So with respect to sections 2.05, 4.02, and 5.07, those all dealt with in situations when there would be a need for a special election. And our state statutes were changed with respect to special elections, and the legislature specifically made those applicable to both statutory cities and what we are at Marshall as a charter city. And because of that, there's only 4 dates where a special election can occur. So the charter, when applicable, was revised to reflect that if there was a special election needed, it would comply with those state statutory dates. There was some language that was included to clarify just when timing of resignation, if there was a council resignation, timing related to that, and if in the rare instances there was a tie, how that tie would be broken. With respect to section 2.10 that talks about the wards, again, this is arising out of a statutory change that was related to the redistricting of wards, and so that was amended to comply with those statutory changes. 3.06 was amended to reflect changes that really arose in our state law related, that was after COVID, with respect to joining meetings remotely via interactive technology. There's some things that the statute requires of all councils, whether statutory or charter city council members, to comply with, to be able to join a meeting remotely. So that was changed to reflect those statutory changes. In section 3.13, we added language, which is very common for many cities who have charters, to be able to have a table on the back so our public can be able to see when there has been some of these non-substantive ordinances that have been passed, but that aren't actually in the text of our code. And this allows them to be able to go to a table and see what the number is, and then they can call staff and get those. And you might wonder what some of those are. Many of them are something like a franchise agreement that had to be passed by ordinance, but isn't necessarily adopted into the text of the code itself. So there's various types of contracts or agreements that allows a table for. So it allows more transparency, but a more manageable code at the same time. Section 5.02 is something that has to be changed. The way that it was written in our charter was very common, but there was a U.S. Supreme Court case that involved actually the state of Colorado, which stated that for when there's a petition coming from public, and to put something on a ballot, that before it was worded so that the committee who was having petitioners go around to get signatures wouldn't be able to pay those persons for doing that work. And the Supreme Court said that was not constitutional, that you have to allow that to be paid. What we don't want to have happen is people getting paid to actually sign. So that's what the revisions of our current charter, you'll see that language revised to comply with that U.S. Supreme Court decision. And finally, the last section is 7.01 was additional language added to the charter to allow for the council in their role as overseeing the controlling the finances of the city to, by policy, be able to create authority for some expenditure of funds that further public purpose, but that maybe the legislature hadn't thought about it and hadn't adopted a statute to allow it. So that's overall the changes that you're seeing in front of you that were recommended to you by the Charter Commission. Keep in mind that this process is set forth in state statutes for amending charters, and it requires under our state law under 410.12 subdivision 7 unanimous approval by you as council for these charter amendments to be adopted as through ordinance. That doesn't happen, then it would go back to the commission and they would make the decision whether they put it out to public or not.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Thank you for your thoroughness. Amanda, as a Charter Commission member, anything you feel the need to add?
No, I just want to thank Pam for all her time and efforts into helping us make these changes. It's been quite a while since changes have been made to the ordinance, so it's a refresh and getting things up to date. We all sat together and combed through it, and it all makes sense. It's all sensible, and it's just, like I said, getting it caught up. So thank you very much.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Make a motion to close the public hearing first, correct?
Yes.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by John to close the public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to consider the adoption of the ordinance that would amend the city charter. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass unanimously. We'll move then to agenda item number 4. This is our final public hearing of the evening. This is related to the vacation of the alley and utility easements in the Schwann Corp. 1 addition. This is in the area where the aquatic center would be constructed. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. We have an exhibit in the packet that identifies the area that we're talking about. There's an existing 12-foot alley between Greeley and East Saratoga Street that cuts between parcels 1 and 2 in Block 3 of Schwann's Corp. 1 addition. There's also a 5-foot easement adjacent to that alley. The petition is to vacate both of these areas and allow for the construction of the aquatic center over top of that space. So we would be combining into these adjoining lots. We did reach out to all utility companies and looked for feedback. Blue Peak does have some facilities in the alley today. They have a work plan to have those rerouted this spring and summer. So no concerns from city staff, and we'd recommend to continue forward.
Any input as part of this public hearing? Any questions from the council? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll now then consider the resolution that would grant the petition for the vacation.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 5. This is project AP-003, the airport snow removal equipment SRE building. consider the award of the contract. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. We did receive bids on January 23rd for this project. You remember we tried to bid this project about a year ago and only received one bid that was over our budget. So we went back to the drawing board with TKDA, and credit to them, I think, and the Airport Commission for some of the work that was put into it to come up with a project that seemed to be a little better suited to the market, and also they did a good job of drumming up some interest, because we did receive 5 bids, and you have that on the tabulation included in the packet. Susner Construction of Marshalls, the low responsive bid that we received. In the packet's also a recommendation letter from TKDA. Airport Commission heard and reviewed the bids on February 6th, and they recommended unanimously to award the contract, including bid alternate for landscaping, in the amount of $2,913,100. I also included a cost breakdown sheet that TKDA prepared in the packet as well, so you can see the different eligibilities and participations where we use federal funds, state funds, and local funds to complete this project. Estimated local cost is shown right now at right around $650,000 for this project. I'll note that number is an estimate, and we're not exactly sure on what the specific federal and state funding share will be, but we need to work down that path. A motion of approval tonight sets us forward to start working on securing grant agreements. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer them, but we would recommend to move forward and award the project to Susner pending state and federal grants.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for your work on this. Any comments from either the Airport Commission or the Public Improvement Committee?
I can start. This is a good example. I'm going to toot our own horn here. This is a good example of a bid that came in way over budget and, started at PIT, and we said, this doesn't look good. And it came to council, and this council being very financially responsible, and that's a good quote to put in the paper, Deb, financially responsible, said, we're not going to spend that kind of money on this building, and it went back, and I think we're getting a good alternative being built by a local contractor to keep the money in our economy. I think this is an example of government doing stuff correctly.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Craig?
Well, and I think that pretty much sums up the Airport Commission and the rest of the PI&T. So, and again, a lot of kudos to Jason and our staff. Our consultant did a very good job of going back and kind of reworking the whole position. I think that there was a little bit of shell shock all the way around a year or so ago. And I think this is going to be worth the wait. I think now as you go out, I talked to one of the other new tenants out in that park, and I guess the frame is up. I haven't driven by to see it. So it is the bridge to opportunity that's truly coming to fruition at that section of the airport. So this is a good project. It's been long overdue. I think it's just going to be better for all the way around. We're using space that should be dedicated more to aircraft. We're using it right now for snow equipment, and we need this dedicated piece. It's a good step forward.
Any other input? With those comments, I would entertain a motion to award the contract for.
I would make that motion to award the contract.
I would second it.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Craig. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion does pass. This time I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess. We are on the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda we'll bring up on the screen. Well, and they include consider the approval of the administrative hearing officer, consider the request for Marshall Downtown Business Association for St. Patrick's Parade, March 16. Redwood River Watershed, the designee delegate and alternate, Lion Circle, the joint powers with the Minnesota Crimes Against Children, renewal of the contract with Frontline Warning System, and replacement of defective equipment, tobacco license for Family Dollar, the allow alcohol beverages in city-owned facilities and parks, and consider approval of the bills and project payments. Any item to be removed for separate discussion?
I move approval of the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 15, the Highway 23 Lift Station Improvement Project, the Phase 3 selection, and consider the authorization to advertise for the bids for the wastewater 23 Phase 4 wet well renovation. So with that, Jason, do you want to start this?
Sure, I can do that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'll just turn it over to Scott Trudson, our wastewater plant superintendent. He'll present this item, but thank you for the opportunity to introduce. Scott?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's kind of a two-part agenda here tonight. Going back to May 9th of 2023, the City Council rejected the single bid for the Highway 23 lift station improvement project and adopted a four-phased plan for the improvements. Phase 1 consisted of installing new VFD drives and an automatic transfer switch. That was completed in 2023. Phase 2 consisted of purchasing 2 flight pumps for the lift station. That was approved at the July 11th, 2023 council meeting. So that brings us up to Phase 3. And Phase 3 is to purchase the additional 2 pumps for the lift station. We've received an updated quote that's in the packet from our local flight pump supplier, Electric Pump. Because we are in their territory, they're our only source for flight pumps. And the good news is the cost of the pumps has been held the same as it was in 2023. So that's the first part of this. The second, or the final phase, Phase 4, consists of removing the 4 existing submersible pumps, the wet well piping and the guide rails, renovation of the wet well structure with concrete repairs needed in a new coating system, installation of new pumps that we supply, installation of new piping in the wet well structure, and then probably the biggest part is the bypass pumping of the lift station while renovations are being completed. We've got a proposed timeline. Bolton & Mink has worked on the bid documents for us, and they've included a timeline. If the council authorizes to advertise tonight, we could advertise for bids on February 20th. Council can consider awards of bids on March 27th. Construction substantial could be October 31st, and completion could be November 30th of 2024. We do have funds in the wastewater department CIP for both the pumps and for the renovation. Estimate of the renovation is estimated $275,000. The pumps are $100,994. So if there's any questions on this, I'm certainly entertaining them.
Questions?
No questions, but I think they're refresher. If I remember correctly, we originally bid this whole project out and it came in extremely high.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm going on my fiscally responsible kick here. And we as a council decided to do this different to bring the costs down, which saved the city substantially. But that being said, can I make a recommendation for both in one recommendation?
Yes.
I'd make a recommendation that we do both phases because it's very important we keep sewage moving.
Motion by Jim,
I'll second it.
seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, well, just one discussion. One of the reasons why the cost is brought down is the additional work that your staff put into it. So thank you.
City.
Thank you.
Other discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I don't have my camera on. Let me turn my camera on. With respect to, I would just be curious from staff and Jason if the bidding would be changed with those those phases done together.
I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, Pam, but no, I'm not, well, maybe you could rephrase it for me so I better
And do you want
understand.
separate motions? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah,
Okay. Would you withdraw your motion?
I withdraw my motion,
Second,
I'll make a motion for the first phase, which I believe was phase 3,
to the pumps.
purchase of the pumps.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And that motion passes. And then phase 4.
I also make the motion, we take phase 4 out for bids.
I would second that
Motion
motion.
by Jim, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Thank you, and thank you, Pam. And thank you, Jason. And thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Jim.
Everyone. Okay, so we'll move then to agenda item number 16, the airport's no removal equipment building, the professional services agreement with TKDA. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. Included in the packet is a agreement with TKDA for construction phase of the airport SRE building that we've just awarded earlier this evening. The cost of the construction phase and closeout phase is a not to exceed contract for $280,200. It'll cover costs associated with TKDA being on site and generally available and around to help administer the project and ensure that it gets built properly. When you look in the project cost breakdown, which was included at the last item, but I included again in this item just because the engineering is included in the cost breakdown, it's just nice to see the difference. Looking at around $40,000 in local costs out of this $280,000. The rest will be federal or state eligible by our estimation. In talking to TKDA, we actually think that it may be lower than that, but that's what we're estimating at this point in time. So we would recommend to move forward to help us get this done with this contract with TKDA. If there's any questions, I can try to address them.
Questions?
Question I have, I read through this, basically, they will become the construction manager on this project. I mean, to sum it up, as I read through this, that they're going to work very closely with the contractor. So we're not, and I know there's another project we did where it fell upon our building inspection department to really task the completion of that project properly. And I just, if we're hiring them, I don't want to see that happen again. And it wasn't TDK that was involved with that.
Yeah, understood. That's a good point, and you're correct. They are going to act as kind of an owner's rep on the project. The building department will still be involved in that a building permit is required, and they'll make their necessary inspections. But yes, TKDA will be taking responsibility, managing all the federal and state paperwork burden as well. There's a lot of things that go into it.
And then the punch lists fall under their lap also, correct?
Yes, they will help us.
Punch lists are completed. and-
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Motion by Craig, motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 17, the instrument landing system replacement at the airport. Once again, we have an agreement, professional services agreement to consider with TKDA. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. We first brought this to City Council last January with the idea that we'd be doing a project last year to improve the ILS. MnDOT's Navigation Aids Office had funding available. They wanted to start upgrading these systems across the state. We were a priority. They picked us out to start moving the process forward. We had gotten council authorization to start that project and look for grant requests last year, and then the state kind of went dark on the topic. So we've been waiting, and now they're back and ready to go. We have a lot of equipment on site. Actually, the state has just delivered it because they're providing all the electronics. They just needed somewhere to store it, I think, and they had already purchased a bunch of these systems. So we have some electronics on site. We did include this project in the capital budget for this year. We are responsible for the civil design work, the footings, the compliance with all the airfield requirements. And that's what we would be hiring TKDA to do, to evaluate and put together plan documents to bring this project together and to install MnDOT's equipment that they've provided. So you have a proposal in the packet, $94,400, again, a not to exceed contract for everything that they've identified in the scope. With your approval, we would request a grant agreement from the state of Minnesota, a 70-30 grant agreement, resulting in a local cost on the project of just under $30,000. If there's any questions, I can answer them, but we would recommend that we move forward and start the process with MnDOT.
Greg, any comments from the Airport Commission?
Yeah, and this is actually, we got into some pretty good detail when we discussed this at the Airport Commission, and there's a lot of like soil stability warranties and stuff. When they put these things in, you can't afford to have it shift ring. This is exactly what the pilots use for really sketchy condition landings. It's an instrument landing guidance system, so pretty critical, very important. TKDA has a lot of experience in this, and it's absolutely crucial that we have someone at that level involved to this degree. So, and again, it's really pretty exciting to have this going. And if you listen to the pilots that are in on the Airport Commission and they get into their pilot chatter, these things are pretty backbones. And I get back on my soapbox again to talk about the value for us as a community to have a facility that has this kind of capability, especially when things are tough, because this type of system makes a huge difference in critical function that uses airport services. So again, kudos to all of our staff and the people in the community that are involved to keep that airport at the level it's at, and it's something that we should be very proud of, and to maintain this investment is really smart.
Very good. Any other questions or input? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion does pass. And agenda item number 18, consider adoption of the ordinance amending the interim cannabis prohibition. Pam?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. This is the ordinance amending an interim emergency ordinance related to putting a pause on the sale of the retail sale of the cannabis products, and in addition to other businesses related to cannabis and products and that lower potency hemp type product. This was first introduced in January 23rd in response to a desire and some opportunities to allow the on-site sale of some of the lower potency hemp edible products, and also the manufacture of a specific product at the brewery and the distillery. So with a lot of discussion, it went through LNO, and so what's in front of you is the amendment to the moratorium allowing that limited manufacturing of the lower potency hemp edibles intended to be consumed as a beverage only. And with that restriction on it's an accessory use of that business. It's also reaffirming that the exclusive liquor store may sell those same types of lower potency hemp edibles, including the lower potency hemp beverages. And then through the committee process, there was a expansion to allowing the on-site sale and consumption of those products at existing businesses that have an on-sale liquor license already. As I think city administrator had mentioned last time, this is just that short-term amendment to allow this opportunity that's available that won't pose any threats to the community after having done a study on that. But the council can expect to see some type of additional regulations with respect to registration and whatnot down the road.
Thank you, Pam. Comments from the legislative and ordinance?
Attorney Whitmore stated it fairly well, and there was a lot of discussion again, and this is what the best idea that we came up with to propose to the council. So Legislation and Ordinance Committee recommends it.
Any questions? If not, is there a motion?
I would move.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to council member, commission board liaison reports. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, everything that I have, we've pretty much acted on tonight. As far as the airport commission, I will say that I want to thank again staff and our members of the PINT committee. We've actually been pretty busy. We had a very productive meeting this afternoon prior to council. Number of other items that will be coming in front of council here in the next month or month and a half to act on. But today we involved some other department heads that don't always sit in on PINT, and I just want to thank the city staff for all of that hard work, and EJ and Sharon for kind of helping us navigate through the pros and cons of the options we may pick, and then getting things that are good for the community, still fitting into our budget, because as Councilmember Lozinski says, we like to bring things at or below our budget and still do good things for the city. So we're pretty blessed here with staff, and the only person I think that I've forgotten to thank so far in the room tonight is Alex. So Alex, thank you too, and that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Steve?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Amanda?
Public Housing Commission met yesterday, just talking about the 5-year capital fund program. And then the March meeting is an annual meeting that's open to anybody in public housing that wants to come and ask questions or speak. So that's coming up next month.
John? C?
The DEI Commission met, and we had decided that we are going to go ahead and do a strategic plan first. And hopefully that will help us attract some new members. And I realized missed opportunity today. We had a DEI training that we could have advertised for more members. So dang it.
Yeah, we should have cornered him.
I know, we should have. So next time. And then the Convention Visitors Bureau, we met at Wings Axe. Some people got to throw some axes after, but they are going to put together figure an amount to donate to the Aquatic Center to sponsor maybe the climbing wall or something like that. And I missed the library board meeting.
And Jim?
I have nothing.
We'll move then to council member individual items. Jim?
I've been in meetings since 8 o'clock, so I have nothing.
You have two, right?
What?
Since 8 o'clock.
Yeah, right. Actually, I've been there since 7:30. We had our, not to beat you or anything, it's not a contest or anything, yeah. We had it Begins With Us conference today, so it's a DEI conference, and thank you, Sharon, for attending both days. Yesterday, we had a poverty simulation, and today we had the conference, and thank you to the mayor for coming and doing the welcome and calling me out to the whole conference. So they all gave me a hard time about being a council member there, but it was a really good event. We had almost 200 attendees, so that was a really well-attended event, and everybody had a really good time and learned about what we can do to be more inclusive and accessible town.
Great. John? Craig?
I don't have anything, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Steve?
I've got something that was forwarded to me by a constituent, and Steve is going to bring it up. So I hadn't heard about this, but as you can read, it says, "Dear council members, the city of Marshall, or can the city of Marshall send a message to the state opposing the bill to become a sanctuary state? McLeod County appears to be doing so. We are not at all opposed to legal immigration. It's the illegal part we are opposed, especially the part that will prohibit state or city law enforcement from upholding and enforcing federal law." Thank you. You can tell there. And I think if that's going to become an issue, I'm all in favor of that, because you can see the cities that were sanctuary cities are now inundated, overrun, and the law enforcement doesn't know what to do. And they're kind of regretting what they did. And all the buses and planes that are dropping off people from states that they're going into, it's going to be a problem if Minnesota becomes a sanctuary state. So
Why don't we hold on that? Legislature is in session, first day was yesterday.
yeah,
See what the state does. It's really a state issue, and then if we have to respond, we'll respond.
sounds good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, but thank you, Councilman Meister, for bringing that forward.
Okay. Amanda?
I've got nothing.
Okay. Thank you, Craig, for running the last meeting in my absence.
Well, you know, I was proud of the fact that when I got up the next morning, there wasn't ash and smoke. We did okay.
You did great. I watched. I will move then to staff reports. Sharon?
In the essence of time, Mr. Mayor, I have no report.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you. I've got a few things. Just like to let the council know that the city of Marshall was awarded a concrete paving award for the West Lion and North 3rd Street project that was completed last year. We had applied for the Concrete Paving Association of Minnesota award for an urban reconstruct, and we were informed that we'd be getting that award. So that's exciting
Does
news.
that include like a 10% coupon for our next project?
Earmuffs, Pam. Yeah. No, it does not, but it's a nice gesture for the contractors anyways. Like to remind council that the bid opening for the Whitney reconstruct is on February 22nd, so that's coming up. Hoping for good numbers there. Thank you to the PIT committee for the time this afternoon. We covered a lot of ground. Another piece of what I think is good news, but MnDOT Aeronautics did let us know a week ago that they would like to fund a skid loader at the airport. I had mentioned to the council that we were applying for a skid loader and a tractor at the airport, and they did let us know about that. So we'll have to bring that forward at some point very soon to equipment review, and then also talk financing with EJ, Sharon, and the council. So that's a piece of good news. And then lastly, we had our FAA and MnDOT Aeronautics CIP meetings last week hosted at our airport. They also had some neighboring communities visiting and holding their meetings out of our airport too. Those went well, and they did note that we may get our other piece of equipment funded yet. We may not. They're still getting through. It was a higher end application. They're just seeing where they lie with their funds and who's accepting. So all good news. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jason. Pam?
No, nothing. Thank you.
The council has the remaining items. Any comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
By Steve, seconded by Amanda.
Sorry.
To a vote.
We all agree.
We close the voting.
It's been a long week.
It's Tuesday.
Are adjourned. Thank you.
It's Tuesday.